So let me just, left to right, Alec van Gelder is Network Director of the International Policy Network. To my immediate right is John Christensen, who you saw in the film, Director of the International Secretariat at the Tax Justice Network. I'm a presenter for BBC Radio Leeds, worked for the BBC for the last nearly 20 years, which is frightening because I still like to think I'm a young man in my mid-20s. To my left is somebody who probably is, Alice Delamere, who's the regional Oxfam campaigner for Yorkshire and the North East. And then Dr. David Hall-Matthews from the University of Leeds. And then on your right is John Hillary, who's the Executive Director of War on Want.
The content I thought was really ambitious and really strong, particularly the idea of dealing with the structural issues, really trying to probe the reasons, the root causes behind poverty and its continuation. I thought it was very good to tell the story of colonialism. I think that historical perspective, which set up the structures of interdependence and interrelations in the world economy, are absolutely crucial. It's a story we don't hear, and I think it's a story which is well told.
I think the film only tells part of the story, and I agree with many of the anecdotes used, especially in terms of the influence wielded by the IMF and the World Bank, which I suppose I should remind everyone here are actually government institutions. They're not funded privately, they're funded by governments, they're funded by us taxpayers in the UK and in the Western world, and probably John, if not other panelists, probably know more about how that funding is collected and dispersed and so on. And I disagree as well with the kind of the structural adjustment programs. So that's something we could probably also agree on. My problem is that I think many of the people who were interviewed in the film are too concerned with ideas and not concerned enough with results.
But I sort of agree with both John and Alec. Although it was very full, it was also very partial. I like the main argument of the film, though, very much. That basically what you need is a social democratic state. A government that takes responsibility for the provision of social goods. Okay, welfare, water, education, health. And some of these things can be provided through the market, but very often, especially in those kind of areas, it's difficult to provide those through the market because markets are not naturally competitive in some sectors.
The thing that really grabbed me the most, the whole film overall, is the issue of inequality, and that's inequality within countries, inequality between countries, and inequality of sort of power relationships going on. That's something that really, really came out to me. Some of you may know that Duncan Green has written a book very recently called From Poverty to Power, published by Oxfam International, and this also deals with the issue of inequalities. This is something that Oxfam's kind of looking at. Also, From Poverty to Power, and Duncan Green looks at effective states and how effective states can help in ending poverty and inequality. And it looks at active citizens, and as a campaigner, active citizens is something that I'm really concerned with. I'm passionate about inspiring people in this country to do something about these issues.
What do I think of the film? I think it's powerful. I'm a development economist. I think it covers a lot of issues. Some perhaps too many issues. I've heard criticisms that the film isn't balanced. Well, who the hell needs balance? For years we've been listening to very orthodox economists, most of whom I profoundly disagree with, most of whom have never actually worked in industry, never worked in the banking sector, frankly don't know what the hell they're talking about. I don't think a film like this should be balanced. I think it's quite right that it takes a heterodox position, because we've heard plenty of the orthodox economists and they've been profoundly wrong. I'm very proud to be captured. They actually caught up with me in Nairobi. What I was doing there was I was looking at investment flows into the flower industry in Kenya, and I was looking at the tax arrangements behind these flows. In other words, let's look at the money. Because the argument has always been, okay, these investment flows will help the countries because they will either create employment or they'll create tax revenues. Do they help? They have 10-year tax holidays. As soon as the tax holidays come to an end, the companies move on to the next country. That's exactly what's happening in Kenya. So all the fair trade flowers you buy in Marks and Spencer and so on, well, they've been there, the companies producing these flowers have been there for 10 years. They're now moving on because the tax breaks have finished. They're moving to Ethiopia, having left a very, by and large, largely polluted water supply around Lake Naivasha and a labour force that has been hideously exploited.
In my view, there are certain issues that have to be done by the state and certain issues that have to be done by the private sector, but governments are constrained. because of the policies of the IMF and the World Bank. For example, Botswana is landlocked. And so for us to attract investors, it means we have to be a tax haven. It means we have to ensure that if you come and make money in the country, you can repatriate as much as you want. That's how we can attract you. So we are attracting you to come and destroy our place.
No mention whatsoever of the word cooperation, cooperatives.
Andrew mentioned I used to work with Oxfam. I focused on agriculture cooperatives, marketing cooperatives. I was evaluating cooperatives in India, Bangladesh, and Eastern Africa. They are a very strong alternative to a capitalistic model, particularly when there are no, there is no potential for competition. They are extremely good at absorbing local savings and spending local savings in the local economy. They are particularly good, I think, because they have a strong commitment to education built into the charter. The original Rochdale pioneers made education and democracy one of their 6 core principles for cooperation. They are wonderful models for not just developing countries, but also for this country.
What I wanted to say actually was that it's providing an international model as well now. We heard a lot about the free trade models being promoted by the WTO. In Latin America, there is an alternative model, Alternativa Bolivariana, which is impossible to say, but ALBA is what it's been shortened to. And that is now being based on cooperation between countries. So Venezuela is able to give its oil, Bolivia is able to give its gas, Cuba in return is giving the huge number of completely brilliantly trained and skilled doctors to go to work in those countries. And instead of the capitalist model of dog eat dog, you're getting this completely new model, and it's beginning to go across the whole of South America.